Run, party, repeat. Welcome to the East Coast Adventures Dirt and Vert podcast, where we talk all things running, racing, and training to help you get ready for your next big adventure.
Learn from our successes and our failures, and have fun at the same time. Join us right here every week with inspiring guests who share their captivating tales from the trails. And remember, nobody cares.
Run faster. All right, welcome back. This is East Coast Adventures with the Dirt and Vert podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Matt.
And I'm Mike.
And we have a special guest today. Most of you probably know, Andy Glaze. Very distinguished ultra runner. I mean, he's got, if you ever look at his ultra sign up, he's 80 plus races on there, tons and tons of races. But one of the coolest things about Andy is that he's been running 202 consecutive weeks over 100 plus miles. And when I say over 100 plus miles, he doesn't stop at 100. Some weeks he's gone way above that. So, Andy, if you don't care, just tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into running.
Sure. So my name's Andy Glaze. I live in California. I am a fire captain in Los Angeles County. I've been running for about 21 years. And I got into running sort of non-traditionally. Like I never ran or anything in high school or did anything like that. But like in my 20s, I started dealing with some anxiety and depression issues and sort of went down the rabbit hole of exercise to fix that, and took a class on exercise science at a community college. And I had to run 1.5 miles, and I've never stopped since then. So that's the origin story right there. Is just trying to fix myself because I was in a dark spot.
That's interesting, because that's exactly how I started running. Was I didn't run any in high school, middle school, or anything, and had some personal stuff going through a divorce. And Mike Taylor, the guy sitting right beside me, is like, "Hey, you want to go run?" I'm like, "Never have. I don't know. Do I?" And he talked me into doing a race, and it was the worst experience of my life. That I loved it that much. I was hooked.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you then. If you didn't run all through school and as at a younger age, how did you get hooked? Like, what actually done it for you? Was it a race, or was it just the discipline of having something else to do?
Well, I mean, it was, so I won't say I was like totally inactive, like growing up. Like I played football and did some like, high school sports and stuff. But then like throughout my like college and early 20s, like I was very inactive, smoked cigarettes, drugs, alcohol. And I think, what hooked me was just, I was feeling so terrible. I was having these like anxiety attacks. I was feeling like really sad all the time. And this is sort of before the internet, before you could like self-diagnose yourself. So it's like, I didn't really know what was going on. I'd be sitting there, and then all of a sudden my heart would start racing. I started having like a panic attack, and I didn't know what was going on. And so when I started exercising, I just instantly started feeling better. And like all those like symptoms resolved. So I think, it was like the like feeling of having that go away, but then also probably like the endorphin rush of like exercise that like made me feel much better. And then, you sort of get addicted to that instead of like, the other thing. It's like I just felt so much better that I just never quit, because I knew that it was gonna give me this like great feeling.
Yeah, you're trading one addiction for the other, but this addiction much help.
And for a while, I still sort of did drugs and alcohol and ran and like lifted weights and did all that sort of stuff too. I just, it was just that like the anxiety and depression went away. So.
I mean, you didn't need the other stuff to go with it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, eventually I got to a point where that was just interfering in everything else. And I came up with new goals, and those goals did not include, doing all that stuff. And so I was able to move away from it. And honestly, when I quit smoking cigarettes, when I quit like smoking weed and stuff like that. It was like running was like the main thing that got me like off of it, because I, anytime I wanted a cigarette, I would just go run. And,
Yeah.
go through those withdrawal symptoms and everything. And it was like, I would do it while I was running. And, we all know, like, especially the first couple miles always suck. So it's like, you're sucking out there, you're withdrawing off nicotine. That sucks. Like, so it's just a big suck fest together rather than sitting at home and feeling it, so
Yeah.
it was able to teach me how to get through like pretty hard points in your life that, and use running to get through them. And, I've obviously continued that on a thousandfold since then.
Isn't it really cool to like look back at how you got started and where you're at now, and like those little things that you did like that is the reason you are where you're at right now. Like that's just so impressive to think about. Like every little step you made with quitting the cigarettes, with quitting drinking, and running. Like look at your life now; it's completely different. I mean, you're influencing people to run now.
Right.
I mean, that's so awesome.
It's great. And, I think about it all the time, honestly, because I know there's a lot of people out there that are in that point where they haven't really started yet, or they're just starting. And I can still remember that like so acutely. So, that's why I'm pretty passionate about, spreading the love of running. I'm not sponsored. I don't sell you anything. I always tell people like the only thing I'm selling is that exercise is amazing. And I don't care if you run, if you walk, if you jog, or whatever you want to call it. I don't care if you ride bikes or lift weights or do anything, just as long as you're moving. My drug of choice just happens to be running, but like, I embrace all forms of athleticism because I think that's the secret.
I agree with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how you started running and what was your first race? So when did you get enough courage to say like, okay, this running thing, like I'm gonna turn up and I'm gonna go do a race? What was your first race?
God, I don't know if I can answer that. I mean, I did little 5Ks and stuff back in the day. I have some cool pictures of myself when I'm like 10 or 11 doing like the local 5K in town. So, I think when I first started running like 20 some years ago, I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time. And I think I did a couple 5Ks in the local Portland downtown area. And then I started, I don't remember like the middle part, but I definitely started training for the Portland, Oregon marathon at some point. And I had got up to, I think my long run was like 18 miles and I got injured. And so I didn't end up running the Portland Marathon. I should probably go back and run it at some point. But so in training for that marathon, I really started putting in long miles and, doing that whole thing. So I got really into, spending more and more time running. Because originally when I first started, it was like I would go to the gym, I would lift weights, I would come home, I would run 5 to 6 miles. I sort of had like a flat 5 to 6 mile loop that I would run. And I would do that like, every other day or something like that. So my mileage was pretty low. I mean, it was good mileage, but like, it wasn't like I was doing anything extraordinary. And then when I started training for that marathon, obviously I'd do like normal mileage and then do a longer run. Have you guys, there's a race in Oregon called Hood to Coast. It's kind of like the original Ragnar. I think Ragnar probably like stole the idea and then, made millions of dollars off of it. But you start at Mount Hood and you're on like a team, just like Ragnar. And then you run to the Oregon coast. It's like 200 and something miles and everybody takes like a leg, or like, I think you end up doing 3 legs. And I did that. And it was like really fun. It's like you run 5 miles and then you wait 12 hours and then you run 7 miles and then you wait 12 hours, you run 3 miles, something like that. But that was like sort of my first longer experience with racing. And it was like, you're in a van with a bunch of other people and everyone's like, engaged. And that was definitely a lot of fun. And I got really into it.
Yeah. Those team relay races like that, they are so fun. I mean, they're easy to get addicted to.
That's the one that Ethan Wynn did.
Yeah, yeah. So we had a gentleman on the podcast. He lives here in Knoxville. His name's Ethan Coffey. But they got the team together. It was really cool. They raced it years ago, and I think they finished really well.
Yeah.
and then they went back this year all as senior masters, I guess.
Something, yeah.
And I think they won, didn't they?
They won it.
So really cool. They love that race. So I think Ethan, he keeps retiring every year, but somehow he manages to run a race.
He retires, and then he goes out and does a 100-miler. And
so hood to coast. And then when was your actual first ultra? Like ultra distance. So I can see on here, but I don't always trust ultra sign up because sometimes people, have run other races on different systems.
My first ultra isn't on ultra sign up. It was, I don't know if it was before ultra sign up or just like, it was just like such a obscure small race. They didn't put the results up, but it was in my local mountains and it was called Beyond the Bear 50K. I think it was in 2013, 2014. And that was my first ultra distance where I ran straight. What's that?
I said, how did that go? Was there
it was terrible. It was
some learning opportunities.
Yeah. I went with one of my buddies. Why I got into ultras is I was doing a lot of Tough Mudders, and they came out with that 24-hour Tough Mudder called World's Toughest. And so I was like, oh damn, I'm gonna have to train to run, I figured I would do like 30 something, 40 something miles in 24 hours because every 5 miles you have to do like 25 obstacles. So it's not like you're just running, right? I mean, it takes time, and at World's Toughest, the obstacles are a little longer and a little bit more time consuming. So I was figuring out to do somewhere like, 40, 50 miles, something like that. So I was like, well, I better, in training, I better like show my body what it feels like to do that. And so I signed up for this 50K, and my buddy who was also doing World's Toughest, we went up together, and, it started well, we were doing well. And then my buddy had like a really, really bad time. So I like stayed back with him and like helped him and like did all this stuff. And then he started feeling good and he was like, all right. And then because I had been like sort of stagnant and like helping him, then I started feeling terrible and my buddy just left me. And so like the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 miles, it was just a death shuffle to the finish. I think I came in like third to last, like, and there was like two, like probably like 60-year-old women behind me that like finished dead last. So I was like, it took me like 9 hours or something, something ridiculous, to finish this 50K. And it was not a good experience as far as, feeling accomplished or anything like that, but I got it done. And, I was like, wow, that's like the hardest thing I've ever done. And, obviously I enjoyed that in hindsight, but, that was my first 50K. Just a disaster.
Yeah, that's how most of them go.
Those first ones are always the worst. They're always.
And this is at like, 7,000 feet, 7,000 to 8,000 feet. So it's like I'm at elevation and lots of vert and all that sort of stuff too, which made it a little bit more challenging.
So how long did you wait before you tried again? Another ultra?
Not long. I mean, I did the World's Toughest, which didn't go super well. It was like, well, it was more of a conditional issue. Like, it was in Vegas that year. There's actually videos of it, but we had like this crazy sandstorm during the race. Like, I mean, it was, to this day, I still think about how wild it was. Like, I had to wear ski goggles. There was points in the race where we had to basically run backwards because the wind with the sand was so aggressive that it was just easier to have it hit your back than to hit your face. And it was freezing cold and you're in and out of water. And it was just, that was also not such a great experience, but I did go back the next year and do it again. But, so like, I want to say a couple months after that, I did another 50K. I think I did it in like, I don't know, like 6:30 or something like that. So I could improve by like 3 hours, and learned a lot. I mean, that one, it was in the desert. So there was like no bushes or anything anywhere around. And the whole time I had to take a shit. And I didn't know what to do because there's like nowhere to take a shit. It's like, I would have had to just like drop right in front of everybody else running. And so I like held this shit for 30 miles. It's just a terrible experience, So So again,
You
every
were
race you're
you
just
were
learning a
flying
little bit about
fast.
yourself. Yeah. So that was the next one, and then I started. I think I bumped up to maybe I did a 50, and then I bumped around for a while doing 50s, 50Ks, and then eventually bumped up to 100K, and I crewed a couple 100 milers to kind of understand what that was all about before I eventually did a 100 miler. But I did like
So
lots of races before I did a 100 miler. Like I know everyone wants to get to that 100 mile distance, and I think that that's a great number, but you have to train your body to be able to do it, and you don't want to get like an overuse injury or anything like that. So I always sort of encourage people to like do lots of 50Ks, do lots of 50 milers, a couple 100Ks, and then progress to that 100 miler, just so your body's ready.
yeah, because you're always trying to like set that tolerance bar just a little bit higher, and if you jump right into a 100 miler, there's a good chance it's going to be a really, really bad day, or you're just not going to finish it.
Thinking what I did.
And you can get a stress fracture, you can get an overuse injury. I mean, there's a lot of things like that will happen if your body is not ready to take that sort of abuse. And that, I always say like the first couple races, like you should really focus on your like nutrition and your hydration plan, because in a 100 mile race, you're really going to need that. You can fake your way through a 50K, but like you could not fake your way through a 100 miler. You're going to have to eat, You're going to have to drink, you're going to have to like really take care of yourself. So it's best to like, test out your plan in a smaller race and then like implement it in a bigger race.
That's great advice. Yeah, that's the one thing that can take you out quicker than anything is nutrition.
100%. Yeah.
How long did it take you to dial yours in?
Man, it's gone through a lot of changes. I mean, a lot. I've done. Well, first of all, so I'm plant-based. I've been a vegetarian for over, I don't know, it's close to 20 years. And about 4 years ago, I started having a lot of stomach issues while I raced, and discovered that I had like a dairy allergy. And so I went vegan at that point. So I've been vegan for 4 years, and obviously that changed my like nutrition plan quite a bit, because prior to that, it was like, a lot of quesadillas, a lot of grilled cheese, like all that sort of stuff in the middle of a race. And now obviously I can't do that. Plus it's just like, it complicates things when you can't have dairy in a race. So, but the problem with me is I run so much that I get tired of eating the same thing all the time. And so my nutrition plan changes a lot just based on, okay, I can't eat that anymore. You have to find things that you want to eat and you're excited about eating, because when you're, 80 miles in, you're not really going to be excited about putting anything in your mouth. So if you already have something that you don't like or you're sick of, that's just going to be even worse. So you kind of have to find things that like, you're excited about eating and don't wreck your stomach and give you energy and all that sort of stuff. And I've done a million different things in the last 10 years. So yeah, it's just always changing. But most people don't race as much as me. Most people don't run as much as me. So it's like, I think it's simpler for most people. Once you find something, you just, dialed in and just do it. And it's going to work because you've done it before. But with me, it's just, it's a little bit different. And I'm like super cheap, because I like, I run so much that like, if I use the good stuff, then I would just be broke, because, it's like I like Spring Energy. They're like $4.50 a piece. It's like, it's like $4.50 for like 120 calories. Like I can't train with something like that. And I can barely race with something like that. That would cost me like, quite a bit of money, just in fuel alone. So I'm always doing this like weird calculation where I'm like, how much does it cost? And then how many calories do I get? What's the cost per calorie? And I'm always trying to find the cheapest cost per calorie, so that I can like still get the calories in, but like not be, breaking the bank.
Yeah, I was going to say, between nutrition, hydration, and shoes,
it's very expensive.
You're probably spending quite a bit of money just training. I mean, you wear a pair of shoes out in a month, right?
2.5 weeks is about my shoe length, and then there's also socks. Socks are expensive, and I go through socks like crazy.
We need to find you a shoe sponsor.
Nah, I don't want to be.
I
I don't.
I don't think they'd be like, no, he's using them too much.
He's like, I wear different shoes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just don't. I mean, I wear Hoka and I love them, but I don't want to be bought by a company. So, and
That's good.
Hoka understands. I mean, they're getting a lot of
But
free
you
advertising.
seriously go through a pair of shoes every 2.5 to 3 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, last year I went through 24 pairs. So, yeah, it's a lot. And
How many miles was that?
Last year I
100.
ran 7,300 and did 15 ultras. So
have you created your own nutrition yourself that is getting you through this? I mean, do you find that it's easier to take it on races instead of depending on aid stations, etc.?
it really depends on where I'm going. I try to have more. I have an iron gut normally, so it's I can eat a lot of things at a lot of aid stations. I've trained myself. When you do international races, you have to be able to eat things at the aid stations, because a lot of times there's not drop bags and things like that are quite as accessible as races in the States. So I've sort of trained myself to be able to, I was in China once and I ran 100 miles and I ate mostly cashews and Red Bull. So, because that was what was available. That was
awesome.
vegetarian at the time. So, and then I go to UTMB, which is in France, and it's I eat mostly just Coke and baguettes, because that's the only sort of vegan options they have. They've changed it in the last year. They've gotten a new nutrition sponsor, and it's got some good vegan stuff. But previous years, I've run it 4 times. And previous years, it was pretty much I was just bread and Coke the whole time. I'd fill my water bottles with Coke, and then I'd shove a bunch of pieces of bread in my my pack, and that's what I would eat. So you got to be kind of flexible when it comes to this sort of stuff. If I'm at a race that has a lot of drop bags, then yeah, I bring my own stuff. I run a lot of Viper races, which are in Arizona, and the owner is vegan, so there's always amazing vegan options. I just ran Coldwater last week, and they had vegan quesadillas, and what else do they have? I think they had vegan sloppy joes and some stuff. And a vegan quesadilla at mile 80 when it's cold and dark out, was pretty awesome. So
yeah, how many times have you finished that race? Quite a few, right?
Yeah, that's 4. I've done it 5 times. I have 1 DNF. I had stomach problems, and I learned can't eat chocolate during a race. So, but yeah, I've done it 5 times and finished it 4 times. So, and won it once.
Well, you're kind of like a race connoisseur at this point with all the events you've done. So,
I'm trying to branch out. I mean, the thing is because of my work schedule, I get a little lazy as far as just doing local races and stuff, because for me it's easy just to pop over, run 100 miles, and then go back to work. And it's the travel is time consuming, and then I have to take time off work and do all that stuff. So I wish I had done more diverse races. I'm trying to branch out. This year I'm doing a lot more diverse races. I'm going to I've never raced in Colorado. I'm going there twice. I'm racing in Montana, which will be my first time in Montana. And last year I did Wyoming, and I'm going back to that race in Wyoming this year. So I'm trying to branch out and do some new stuff. But there's, only
keep it up and you'll hit an ultra in every state.
Yeah, and that would be a cool goal. I definitely have some friends that are doing that, but it's just, you only have so much paid time off, and I don't even know how I'm going to cover this year. I'm already stressed about it.
Are you guys 24 on, 48 off?
We're 48 on, 96 off. But
oh wow, nice. Okay,
it's hard during fire season to get any days off in California. Yeah. And then
I cannot imagine.
Yeah, so it's just gonna, I sign up for them and hopefully I'll be able to go. But if there's some sort of crazy emergency going on, then that's my job. I've had to miss races before because California lit on fire and, couldn't get off work. So part of the, I guess, responsibility of, being a firefighter is like, it's not always gonna work out, but you still can plan for it and hope it will. And a lot of times race directors are pretty cool about it. Like they'll give me like, if like I can't get there because I'm being forced to work, then most of the time they'll like give me a credit or, let me race the next year. So
Yeah,
every once in a while you have a bad one, but if that happens, believe me, I will let social media know.
And probably never run it again. So.
Yeah.
Nor will anybody else. No, I'm
Yeah,
just
that's right. So that's a good point though. Like between the shoes, the nutrition, the hydration, and just the cost of the races. I mean, you're spending a fortune a year. We had a gentleman on a few weeks ago. His name's Walt Honloser. I said it right this time.
I know.
If you listen, Walt,
Walt, we were talking about his crazy stint where he ran
100 hundreds, or no, he ran 50
100 milers in a year.
Yeah.
And one of the questions we asked him was like, how much did you spend on that? That was one of the listener questions. And I mean, it's crazy. He spent $30,000 just trying to break that record. And that's crazy to think about. And that probably doesn't include everything he spent. That's just like race fees and everything he was talking about. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
And then we have Andy over here who recycles shoes every 2 weeks.
Should be no one without shoes over there at all.
Yeah, it adds up. That's for sure. But I don't own a boat. I don't own an RV. I don't have all that. This is my hobby. So it's like, you think about how much all that stuff that people, ATVs and all this. I don't have any of that stuff. So this is it right here. This is my boat.
Yeah. This is boat payment.
Pretty awesome boat.
Okay. Yeah.
Is the actual 100 the number itself is what important to you, or do you go out there and, I mean, when you're running, say I have to get this, or is that just the way it kind of just fell and you have routes that just provide that scenery and everything that you want?
The race,
does that make sense? Do you have
the race?
Yeah. No. Just your weekly mileage.
Yeah, your 100 miles.
I think it's just because like when I started running, I can remember my first 100-mile week, which was a long time ago. We'll say like 15 years ago or something like that, and it was so hard to do. And it's just sort of like that number that's like it feels like really difficult to do. And it is. I mean, it's a challenge. So I don't know. It's a big round number. It's like it's just a goal. And I don't know. I mean, like I never hit it. I mean, unless I'm like sick or there's like something wrong with me. I'm not, like you said, I'm normally like 120 to like 160 is normally where I like.
And at one point, you were trying to do a 200-mile streak, correct?
Well, I don't know. I did it for 18 weeks straight. So 200. I don't know if that's trying, that's succeeding, but like, yeah, it happened. Yeah. That was really terrible. Oh my God. That was because, I mean, the issue is with that is, I run at work, but obviously I can't run that much at work. And so then I was having to do like 45 miles a day when I was off work. And, that one took a lot of support from my wife because,
you were never home.
Well, and it was like, I was home, but when I would come home, it would be like, I would need food instantly. And she would have to like, really like cater to, I had very little like time to do anything other than train and eat and like, hang out a little bit. So, that was hard, but that was during COVID and nothing else was going on. So, and from like a first responder perspective, COVID was very, very stressful. And so that was like kind of how I was dealing with the like stress of like COVID. They didn't know, it's like COVID happened and it was terrible and everyone was suffering. And like, I don't know if it was ever really addressed, like how much trauma it put on nurses, doctors, and like paramedics, but it was a lot. And it was just like, oh, you guys are heroes. But like, yeah, great. Okay. But like, we're over here like really suffering. And then COVID was over and it was like, okay, everything back to normal. And, you know, we had record number retirements, record number people quitting, changing professions. And I don't know if it's ever really gone back to normal after that. So, and then I work in LA County, and they're always like, okay, we're doing masks again. And it's like, it's like, you know, it's 2024. Like, it's just insane. Like they won't let it go. So
Yeah.
it's the trauma that we all experienced in the emergency. And this is like, I'm sure worldwide, was like really, really high. So I had extra stress I had to deal with.
So 200 miles was the
Yeah.
response.
Well,
It's like
I did 207 2 weeks ago. For my 200th week in a row. And man, that was so hard.
Awesome.
I was like, how did I do this for 18 weeks in a row? Like just 1 week just about killed me. So, but I got it done.
How did you end up in a streak? I guess is my question. Like, not so much,
Yeah, that was
you know, you're doing it now, and you know, and it's kind of a thing. It's people know you because of the streak, which is amazing. And I know you kind of started it, but when did you like realize it was a thing? Like you were going to do this?
Yeah, I mean, so I've done it before. So I did 28 weeks of 100-mile weeks back in, I think 2019 or 2018. So I had like done it before, and then, you know, something I ran Badwater and DNF'd it and like had a really bad race, almost died. And so that ended the streak. So like it was like a thing that I'd done before. And then, you know, like I said, with COVID, there's no races, there's nothing to do, like really needs to like be challenging himself and doing hard things and like all these, you know, pushing myself. Like I needed something. And so, I mean, that's sort of where the origin story of the streak was just like, well, there's no races. And then they started having those like virtual races where it was like, you know, I don't know, like Laz had that run across Tennessee. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'll do a virtual race across Tennessee. And I ran across Tennessee like 4.5 times and got like 5th place overall. You know, everyone else was still running across at one time, and I was on my like 3rd lap. So, you know, that sort of pushed me to like run further and further and whatnot. But, my streak's not like a normal streak. If you go on like all those streak websites, you know, it's like you have to run 1 mile every day, and you know, that's cool, and I you know, appreciate that. But with my job, there might be a day I can't run, so I had to create something that I could do that was like a weekly volume, and not like you have to run every day type thing. So it's like a weird streak. Like most people streak, it's like I've run every day for 10,842 days. Like, I mean, I probably have run every day for, you know, however many years in a row, but I don't keep track of it like perfectly like that. To me, it's just a volume weekly thing. And I think what makes it unique is I don't know if really anybody else is doing that. You know, I sort of just created it for me and my lifestyle and my job. And, you know, I didn't think it was going to go this long. Like, God, it's like, I figured something would happen by now.
I mean, that's pretty cool though, because you've had to have the discipline to keep doing it, but you also, with the way you set it up, you gave yourself flexibility.
Yeah.
Kind of gives you a little bit of grace to do other things, you know, and that was smart. And I think it's awesome. I mean, it's absolutely awesome.
Yeah. I mean, like occasionally, like, you know, if you go do something with the family, or like, you know, you have a wedding or you go to a concert, like you're not going to be able to like, you know, run as much, do as much, like whatever. And so, you know, that's okay. Or if like I go to work and like we're on a big fire all day and I like just totally broke off, like I'm not going to want to go run after like fighting a fire for like 8 hours. So, you know, at that point I can just do it the next day, or, you know, even if I take 2 days off, like no big deal. I can, you know, I can still get my 100 miles. I'm just going to have to like double up. So, and at the end of the day, I also know like, as long as I'm not like gravely injured, I can always run 100 miles on Sunday.
So yeah. And that's one thing I wanted to ask you too, is like, not that anybody should be trying to copy Andy that's listening. Like you just can't jump into 100-mile weeks. So don't do that. But like, I know that, yeah, I know you've had to like, you're doing races, you know, back to back, and you're running, and you've had to have had multiple injuries, which, you don't have to explain all that to us, but how have you managed those injuries and continuing this streak?
Yeah, I mean, most of my injuries, honestly, are from falling. So they
I
normally
know
are,
that pain.
yeah, it's like normally like a trauma type injury. I mean, I just normally just run slower, or like I find like a gait that like doesn't hurt as bad, and then just like sort of like go with it. And after a couple weeks or however bad the injury is, it just goes away, and I just keep going. Which obviously is not recommended. But it works. It's like, do I want the emotional trauma of my brain freaking out, or do I want the physical trauma of like, having a little injury? But yeah, I'm not a coach. I don't have a coach. I don't have any of that. And like, I don't want people to do what I do, but at the same time, it's like, it is possible to run when you're injured. And like, I guess if anything ever happened where it got like really bad, like if I had a stress fracture or something like that, then like I would have to like reevaluate the streak, because, a stress fracture is not going to heal itself. But, if I have like a torn muscle or like a pulled muscle, like eventually that'll get better. So, and my experience of running high mileage for years and years and years is it will, so.
But I mean, and you're having a lot of fun with it too. Like even when you show up to races, that's one thing I love about like your social media and even like TikTok. One of your most viral ones, you're sitting there counting how many times Zach Bitter's lapping you in a race. Like and you're just having fun with it. And I think that's awesome.
I do have a lot of fun. I love racing, and part of it's like I love running far, but it's like also I love like the community, and like this Coldwater. I probably stopped. I think I counted like 55 times I took pictures with people where like people stopped me while I was racing and like, hey, can I take a selfie with you? And it's like, yeah, like I think that's so cool. Like, that they enjoy my content so much that they want to like take a picture with me. Like, yeah, I think that's great. Like, there's nothing like so serious in my races where I'm like, in like some sort of zone where I can't like, stop and appreciate a fan or like, somebody that's into my stuff. So I don't know if you've read David Goggins' like second book, but he talks about that in like Leadville. He's running Leadville and everyone wants to take a picture with him, and and he's like kind of like doesn't really like it, but at the same time is like still does it. So I think it's important. Like I'm inspiring people, and my personality online, my personality on podcasts is like the same personality you're going to see in races. Like there's no real difference. Like the only different personality you'd ever see is like if I'm at work, because I'm a fire captain, I'm the boss, and like I have to be a little bit more intense there. But in general, like the personality you're going to see is the personality you get. So
yeah, and I mean you're doing it with kindness, whereas some of the other people that are influencing, they're doing it with you got to work 24/7, everything, you can't hurt me. Who's going to carry the boat? And
right.
But you're doing it, you're doing it and you're having fun with it and you're influencing people and you're definitely influencing the younger generation, which is pretty cool.
Well, Gen Z is like a different generation, and I don't think they're going to respond really well to like, being yelled at and called a pussy and shit like that. Like, or like you're a bitch, like, that's not going to resonate with them. Just from like, from having to train lots of Generation Z firefighters, I can tell you that will not work with them. Like it might work with Generation X, or like, if Goggins is going to yell at me and call me a bitch, like I'm used to that. Like I played football in the, in the 80s, and, that's how my coaches dealt with me. And so, that's okay. But like, I don't think that's going to resonate with like the new generation. And, that's not necessarily my personality. So
no, we're not.
Well, it's just the pressure.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say it's the pressure take to like see someone who's doing it in a fun way, in a kind way, and influencing people, as opposed to, saying you have to do this, so you got to push yourself. You get, like you're just out there having fun, and people see that. Like that is why you're influencing so many people. It's just catching, and it's awesome.
And it's fun. I mean, at the end of the day, we all know it. Like, yeah, it's a little bit of type 2 fun and like in general, but like it is fun to be in shape. It is fun to like get out and breathe fresh air and like, do all these things that like a lot of people can't do. And,
Yeah.
we're super lucky that we can. And someday we might not be able to. We're all headed toward the same spot, which is, either death or, being real old and not being able to do that sort of thing. So, we got to enjoy it while we can, because someday I mean, I go on old sick people all day at work, right? I'm a paramedic, and I know acutely that someday I'm not going to be able to do what I'm doing. Even like I do this race in February called Jackpot, and it's like national championships, 100 miles, and like I think this year they're going to have 6 80-year-olds running it. And so like I know that if I can do like what I'm doing, like I'll still be able to do it at 80. But it's different, right? I mean, it's not the same as what I'm doing right now. Like, but I mean, that's obviously the goal. But like eventually, you're going to get to the point where you can't. I mean, the body can only handle as much as it can handle, and then it gives up, right? I mean,
Yeah.
And you never know when that point's going to be. Could like what's the guy's name? Pete. I can never pronounce his last name. He's the one that ran across the country the fastest, and he won Badwater a bunch of times. Does that ring any bells?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Starts with a K. Anyways, he was just in a horrible car accident, like right before Leadville. And, he's one of the best runners in the U.S. and got in this horrible car wreck. And like, I think he broke his hip and all these things. Like, obviously he's going to have a like long road to recovery. He might never be the same. And, we're all in that boat where it's like, a moment of time, and it wasn't his fault. Somebody hit him from behind and like messed him up. And I see that all the time too at work. Like, somebody woke up, they got dressed, they brushed their teeth, they put their shoes on just like everybody else, and something happened in their day that was not their fault that either caused them to be dead or like, horribly injured. And it's out of our hands a lot of times. So we got to appreciate while we're healthy and while we're able to do it, not waste any time, because, tomorrow might be the day.
Yep.
Man, that
hits hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, you never know, like even just as small as like planning for a race. I mean, like you've said, there's times where, you don't know if you're even going to be able to make it to the race. I'm sure there's been logistical issues with you being a firefighter, like you can't make it to the race.
Sure.
But at the same time, you're not guaranteed to finish a race either.
Yeah, right.
You just never know. So you've got to take each one, as a blessing.
And that's why one of the reasons I like ultras is like, I know, because I've DNF'd a ton of times, I know that every time I toe the line, something could happen and I won't finish. It doesn't matter how good a shape I'm in. I was in the best shape of my life for Badwater, and I DNF'd it. I DNF'd Moab last year because I fell and landed on my back. And I was in like some of the best shape of my life for that. I was top 10 like the whole race. Like I was absolutely smashing that race, but I hurt my back and DNF'd at 205. I had 35 miles to go, and it was like 35 miles downhill. So it wasn't even like, it would have been a good spot to be in, but things happen and you just can't always control it. So, but that's refreshing in an ultra, right? It's not guaranteed. Just like life, it's not guaranteed. Like, feeling good isn't guaranteed. So I find that exciting. And everyone thinks, oh, you've done all these ultras, it's so easy for you. I promise you, at no point during these ultras is it easy for me. I always suffer. I'm always deep in the pain cave. I might have like better methods to deal with it, but I still suffer greatly. And I still have those talks with myself when I'm like, at mile 80, when the wheels start going off and, the train's coming derailed, like, it happens to me too all the time. But
isn't that the addiction? I mean, that's kind of what we're looking for, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, you kind of crave that once you get to a point, like you're getting used to it. Like when you do your first 50K, you're like, damn, man, this is awful. Like I'm never running again.
Yeah.
But then you're sitting there and you're like, no, I can do better. And then, you keep working at it. And now it's like, you want that pain because you want to see how far you can push through it. You know, like you love that. And I don't know if everybody's like that, but I think most of the people, that's the draw, that's the addiction. It's not so much trying to win a 100-mile race. It's, I want to get better. I want to be better every time. And like for you, you know, most people run 100 miles and they'll slowly build, you know, and improve. But I mean, hell, you're running 100-mile weeks. So like you've had to deal with that pain on a weekly basis. And I can't imagine the amount of discipline that you've had to have some days to say, I just ran Cocodona 250. I got to get up and run.
It's weird though. It's like it's so not disciplined. It's so just like the consistency and the like this last year I ran Canyons, a 100-miler, and then one day later ran Cocodona. So it was like 350 miles in 1 week. With 50...
don't you call this the Coco Canyon?
Yeah, Coco Canyons. And so like I finished Cocodona. I will say like 2:00 in the afternoon. I went and had dinner, went to bed, woke up like super early in the morning and went and ran 5 miles. And so I was running around Flagstaff and I like ran to the like start line or the finish line and people were still finishing Cocodona. And everyone's like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, what? I'm running. What do you mean? Like, you just ran 350 miles. Like, yeah, but the train doesn't stop. And then I flew home and ran a half marathon with my wife that next day. Cause it's like, I think I finished Friday, Saturday, traveled back to California and then ran the half marathon with her on Sunday. So, you know, the train doesn't stop. It just keeps going. It's like go ahead.
How have you been able to, like, is there things you've had to incorporate? Do you do any type of like yoga or recovery? I see you cold plunge a lot.
Yeah, I do cold plunge.
I didn't know if you cold plunge every day.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes at work I can't because we get so busy, but I try. I mean, this is like one of the hardest questions to answer. And, everyone's like,
well, I mean, and if
a video about it. I think, it's like the reason it's hard is because it's like my whole life is recovery. So like every single thing I do is like trying to get back to like baseline, but I never get there. So, one, I believe in active recovery. So I believe that, motion is lotion. So after like a 250-mile race, like it's important to keep moving. Otherwise everything's going to like cramp up and, like get into a bad spot. So I've found that after 100-mile races, 250-mile races, whatever, if you run again within like 10 to 12 hours of the finish, it just helps keep everything lubricated.
Well, Andy, we'll switch turns here a little bit and let Matt get some questions pulled up from the listeners. And while he's doing that, it usually takes a minute. He loses this list every week.
They're hidden all within Instagram.
Our very first podcast, we had printed them all out on a piece of paper, and somehow the paper fell on the floor. So in the middle of the podcast, we're like underneath the table looking for the paper, and I'm like, "You had one job."
Hey, he took the paper. I don't know where it went that day.
But while he's pulling the list up, we asked this question to everybody, and you've kind of answered this a little bit already, but why do you run? Like, what keeps you going when things are so tough? And not talking about your streak, just like in an event, like what keeps you? Why do you run?
I love running, and it also helps me deal with like I spoke in the original part of the podcast. It helped me get over anxiety and depression, and so I'm sure my why is still that I'm using it to deal with emotional issues, keeping them in check.
All right, Matt, did you find this list?
Yeah, I got some. We actually got some more questions while we were sitting here on the podcast.
Oh,
so I had to.
I saw you over there typing. I had to type lost the list.
No, I try to put them all on one little note section, so I'm not flipping back and forth. All right, the first one that came through, it was early as soon as I made the post. It says, where does your passion for ultra running come from?
My passion comes from just my absolute love of running. I wish it was more complicated than that, but I really, really just love to run.
Okay. How many 100-milers have you done?
I don't know. I think it's somewhere in between 30 and 40. They're not all on ultra sign up. I've done a couple self-supported hundreds and just races that don't show up on ultra sign up. So it's hard for me to figure it all out.
Okay. Is there an end goal number for the streak, or is it open ended?
It's open ended. I never thought that it would go this long. For almost 4 years is like pretty insane. I figured I'd be injured or get sick or something. I'd need surgery. I mean, I don't know. There's so many things that can go wrong in a streak like this, and yet it continues. So someday it'll end, and my wife will be happy.
What made you want to do the Coco Canyon?
Well, it was me just being like sort of selfish, and I wanted to do UTMB. And in order to do UTMB, you have to run UTMB races and get like points, and then you get the points and you can enter the lottery. Well, UTMB bought Canyons and made it UTMB by Canyons. So I had to run that race so that I could qualify for UTMB. And I'm one of the original 9 people that have done Cocodona every year. So I have to do Cocodona. I mean, I don't have to, but I want to. And they just happen to be one day apart. So I looked into the logistics of air travel and all that sort of stuff and determined that I could do it. And so I did it, although it was quite difficult.
Wow. How did you get into social media posting?
Well, I'm an old man, and I've been on social media since Friendster. I'm sure a lot of you don't even know what that is, but it went Friendster, MySpace, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and so I started back in the day, and it used to just be all about pictures, and I guess YouTube's in there too. I used to make like YouTube videos about my races and whatnot, but they never really did anything, partially because I was terrible at editing, partially because the cameras weren't good enough. But the combination of easy editing software mixed with better cameras, mixed with platforms that support videos allowed me to really take off when TikToks and Reels became a thing.
And how do you handle having such a big following on social media?
Not well. I mean, I'm the only one that is in charge of my social media, and I don't have a team or any helpers. So I do my best. I try to like respond to people, respond to comments, respond to DMs, but at the end of the day, I'm just one person, and I have a job and a family and also a running addiction. So I do my best.
Have you ran any East Coast races?
Only the New York City Marathon. I need to do it. It's just travel and paid time off and everything is complicated, but maybe 2025 will be the year of East Coast races. All right, here are the questions that we lost yesterday. How many 200-mile weeks have you done? That's another good question. I did 18 weeks in a row back in the day. I don't know. I'd probably guess in the 20s. I've probably done, well, no, because then I've done 200-mile weeks. 200-mile races. Probably over 30. Between 30 and 40 again. How was running that many 100-mile weeks? It's hard. 100-mile weeks are always hard. Even when it feels easy, it's still so time consuming, and the like scheduling and getting all that organized, it always is challenging. Lifetime running goals. What would make you satisfied at the end of your life? I think, what I'm doing now, I think just inspiring people, trying to make the world a better place through motivating people to run and exercise and, do hard things. I think at the end of the day, I just want to like make an impact, a positive one in this world. This world seems to be kind of in a dark place right now. And if I can shine a little bit of light in it while I'm here, I think that will be meaningful at the end of my life. Do you find meaning or value in pain and suffering? Absolutely. I think that there's real value in it. I enjoy it quite a bit, honestly. And maybe that makes me someone that just enjoys pain, but I think a lot of it's just our brain lying to us, and I think that it's it's a good thing to like learn how to push past a lot of that and realize it's all just mental. If you could offer only one piece of advice to someone about running, what would it be? Start slow. Don't be afraid to put lots of walk breaks in when you're first starting. Don't worry about your pace, and just enjoy yourself. And realize, the first mile or two is always going to suck. So try to get past that first mile or two, and then everything will get better. If he talks about liking the suffering, try to get him into Vol State or Fort Frenzy. Yeah, I've looked into Vol State for sure. I have a lot of friends that have done it. I think for me, the biggest hang up is the dogs that come out and try to attack you. I'm not like a super fan of that idea. Most meaningful way you've impacted another runner. I don't know about specifics, but I get probably 20 to 30 DMs a day from people that have run their first race, started running, run their first ultra, and had a really good experience, and attribute, some of that to me. I won't take full credit even if they give it to me, but if I inspired a runner to do something that they had never done before, then I think that's the most meaningful that I've done. So anyways, thanks for asking the questions. Maybe I should do one of these on my own page. Seems a lot of questions for me. So this is a good idea to maybe I'll do this live or something like that. Anyways, thanks again for having me. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.